Hi, it's Helen Tarrant. Hi there, welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen, and today we are going to talk about actually change of use. Now, change of use on a property is about, a lot of people ask about changing from residential to commercial or from commercial back to residential. Now, it is actually easier to go from residential to commercial than it is to go the other way. Now, there are different fire compliances, which is number one, where it makes it hard when you change them. Secondly, of course, there is the different layout. So if you're going from a residential property to a commercial property, you can simply strip a lot of that layout out from the residential, make it an open plan, and then the fire compliance is not as stringent as you would find for a residential. If you're going from a commercial to a residential, the compliance is a lot more because you've got to put in new bathrooms, often new toilets, new electricals, new plumbing, plus you've got to put new proper firewalls in, doorways, all the smoke alarms, all of those things start to add up to it, whereas easier to just strip it back. So that's why I prefer to go residential to commercial and try to charge a higher rent because you're getting a commercial tenant, especially if I'm looking at ground floor. Now, changing of use not only refers to residential to commercial or the commercial to residential, but also to whether you have a tenant that's a hairdresser, a dentist, food outlet, or you're going to have a professional tenant like a solicitor or an accountant. Now, if you are in a light industrial zone, so you might be a psychologist or you might be a lawyer and you're in a light industrial zone. So what that means is actually for light warehousing and storage. You won't be able to come in and occupy it as an office space without getting prior DA approval. So you'll have to call the council or the town planner and work out if you can actually occupy it as an office space. And often the answer is no. And the reason for that is for an office space, you often need different car parking ratios. You need different visitor car parking ratios as well, and also the foot traffic may be a lot heavier than, say, a warehouse where people are only storing stuff and you're only getting trucks coming in and unloading and offloading as well. So while there is usually in warehouses you've got a ratio between office space, and it's usually 20% to 80%, so 20% office space to 80% storage and logistics. And all people working in trade in there, whereas in office space it's purely a sort of 100% office space, or you might have 10% storage. So that's why industrial wouldn't work. And of course, in a purely heavy industrial zone, office doesn't work at all. So you have to look at the zoning. If it's mixed zoning, then yes, office will work, and sometimes you don't actually need a DA to actually get to occupy there, or an occupation certificate from your local council. Now, each council is different, so when you are actually getting a tenant in, it is actually the tenant's responsibility to make sure they're compliant for use. So the tenant needs to, if they want to occupy your premise and they want to do a fit out or refurbishment, especially if they're putting a dividing wall, or they're going to go through any of the areas where they're going to be doing extensive refurbishments, it's their job to actually seek that approval from the council, and you as the owner have the right to ask to make sure and see that occupation certificate before they're allowed to occupy the premise. Because of course you don't want to be responsible all of a sudden that your tenants come in, they fitted out the premise, and then all of a sudden the council comes and says no, they can't occupy there, so therefore your lease is void. So therefore that's something you've got to be careful of. Now, the other way of looking at change of use is actually the location, and as the areas change, the whole zoning changes. So you might have office space that is just office, and you might not get a lot of medical, but if there's a local hospital within 5 kilometers, the whole area could be zoned medical or allied health, or zoned medical use, and that means you can actually now attract a specialist, you can attract allied health, you can attract all these people, and you can actually then change your premise to actually charge slightly higher because you are getting a different class of tenants. So the tenants, obviously with your mum and dad, you're charging a lower rate, but as you go through the levels and you get professional tenants and you get medical tenants, they start to pay a higher and higher rate per square meter because of the demand. There's only very few areas that are zoned medical, and so if you happen to have a residential house, and it's all of a sudden the area gets zoned medical because you've got a hospital being built around the corner within 5Ks, then you can now look at the conversion to a commercial premise and what you might need to do. A lot of that is to do with the layout and, of course, the fire compliance. But once it becomes commercial, normally it stays commercial. And once you have a medical tenant occupying that space, it tends to stay medical and it tends to turn over the same amount of tenants. So a dentist will sell their business to a dentist, radiology clinic will continue to go on, pathology, and so forth and so forth. So when you are looking at a premise and change of use, make sure you check with the council, check with the local town planner, especially if you're buying your own owner-occupier properties, to make sure that it's suitable for your business and you can do all the fit-out you need. As a investor, make sure that before you embark on the whole change of use and the whole changing from residential to commercial the other way back, look at whether that's feasible or not and how much it's going to cost you and how much more rent would you get if you did the conversion. And if you did the conversion and you got the rent that's much higher and it was going to bring the value of your property up, then that's definitely worth it. If it's not, then perhaps that property is not right for you. So it's all about the dollars at the end. As long as you know how much you're going to get in, how much you need to put out, then you know that whether it's going to be a worthwhile proposition as well. So make sure you really do check the zoning, because zoning does matter, and you don't want to void your lease because you're not in the right zone as well. Building classification certificates you can get and request if you're an investor, and that will help to look at the classification of the property, and then you can double check that with council as well. So hopefully that's been really helpful to you. If you want to find out more, or you want to talk about commercial property, you want a personalized strategy, go to helentarrant.com and reach out to me at the Contact Us page. In the meantime, I urge you to check out our free event and free masterclass, so you can learn all about commercial property, join our community. But don't forget to hit the subscribe and the bell, and I'll see you in the next episode.